The sun hung low over Lagos, painting the sky with streaks of orange and gold. Amid the honking of impatient drivers and the endless chatter of street vendors, Amora balanced a tray of fresh oranges on her head, her bare feet moving swiftly across the dusty roadside. She had been selling oranges for as long as she could remember, struggling to survive each day. But today was different. Today, she was about to meet the man who would change her life forever. Jidena Obiora was the youngest billionaire in Nigeria, the CEO of Obiora Holdings. He lived in a world of luxury, private jets, designer suits, and business meetings in Dubai. But despite all his wealth, something always felt empty. His mother, Chief Mrs. Obiora, was pressuring him to settle down. Jidena, money without a family is like soup without salt, she always said. But no woman had ever truly caught his heart. That was until he met her. Jidena's black Rolls-Royce Phantom was parked at a traffic light in Victoria Island when Amora's voice rang out. Oga, buy sweet oranges. Fresh, juicy oranges, Oga. Her voice was different. Bold. Confident. Yet, there was a softness to it. Jidena, distracted from his phone call, turned to look at her. Their eyes met. She had the darkest, most piercing eyes he had ever seen, eyes that carried 1,000 untold stories. Without thinking, he rolled down his window. How much? 500 naira for 3, Oga, she said, adjusting the tray on her head. Jidena smirked. That's expensive. Amora placed a hand on her hip. Oga, these are the best oranges in Lagos. No money, no tasting. His driver let out a surprised chuckle, but Jidena wasn't laughing. He was intrigued. Something about her was different. She wasn't intimidated by his car, his designer suit, or the way his Rolex flashed in the fading sunlight. Instead, she stood tall, her head high, as if she owned the street she stood on. And in that moment, Jidena realized something. For the first time in a long time, someone had managed to steal his attention. And it was just the beginning. Amora clutched the heavy jacket, her mind racing. The fabric smelled expensive, like wealth, like power. Like him. Jidena stood there, rain dripping from his hair, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Come with me, he said. Her heart pounded. Go where? My car. You can't stay here in the rain. She hesitated. She had spent her whole life being careful around rich men. She had heard too many stories, girls lured into flashy cars, only to end up in places they couldn't escape. I know they follow man because of money, she finally said. Jidena exhaled, a small smile playing on his lips. I'm not asking you to. I just don't want you catching pneumonia over a tray of oranges. She studied his face. He wasn't desperate, wasn't forcing her. Just standing there, waiting. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was the way he had been showing up every day, asking about her life like he actually cared. Or maybe it was the way his deep voice cut through the chaos of the city like it belonged in a different world. Slowly, she nodded. Okay. Words collide. The inside of the Rolls-Royce was too clean, too perfect. Amora sat stiffly, gripping the edges of her wrapper like a shield. She felt like an intruder in his world of wealth and comfort. Jidena handed her a towel. Dry yourself. She hesitated before taking it. Thank you. His driver started the car, but Jidena wasn't looking at the road. He was watching her. Where do you live? Ajigona. It wasn't an answer he was used to. Ajigona wasn't the kind of place billionaires ever thought about. It was a place of struggle, of broken dreams. I'll drop you off, he said. But when they arrived, he was silent. He took in the crumbling buildings, the smell of burning wood and gutter water. The children running barefoot in the mud. This is home, he asked. Amora lifted her chin. Yes. She knew that look. Pity. But she didn't need his pity. She had survived this place her whole life. Jidena reached into his wallet. Here. Take this. She didn't even look at the money before shaking her head. I no be beggar, Oga. Jidena blinked. Amora, it's not. Before he could finish, she stepped out of the car, holding his jacket close. Thank you for the ride. And just like that, she disappeared into the night. Jidena sat in his car, stunned. No woman had ever walked away from his money before. And for the first time in his life, he realized he didn't want to save her. He wanted her. But he had no idea that loving Amora would come at a price. Because in a world where billionaires and street vendors don't mix, someone was bound to get hurt. The orange seller and the billionaire, final part. For days after that rainy night, Jidena didn't see Amora. His car still took the same route, but she was gone. No bold voice calling out for him to buy oranges. No confident stare challenging his wealth. Nothing. And it bothered him. A billionaire shouldn't be chasing after a street vendor. He had women lining up for him, models, heiresses, business moguls. Women who knew the world he lived in. But none of them had the fire Amora had. So, he did something he had never done before. He went looking for her. Jidena found himself back in Ajigona, stepping out of his luxury car into the muddy streets. His driver and bodyguard trailed behind him, but he barely noticed. People stared. A man dressed in a designer suit had no business here. Finally, he spotted a little boy sitting outside a makeshift shop, peeling an orange. Jidena crouched beside him. Where is Amora? The boy squinted. Who be you? A friend. The boy hesitated, then pointed toward a small house with a rusted roof. She dey inside. Jidena walked up to the house and knocked. Then the door creaked open. Amora stood there, eyes wide, clutching his jacket like a lifeline. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't been eating well. You disappeared, he said. I needed to, she whispered. Jidena, we no fit be friends. Why not? She swallowed hard. Because men like you know they marry women like me. Jidena took a step closer. Who said anything about marriage? Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't respond. He ran a hand through his hair. Amora, I don't care about where you're from. I don't care about your past. I just know I can't stop thinking about you. Her eyes searched his, as if trying to find the lie. Jidena, she murmured, voice shaking. You no go fit handle the life way I live. Let me try. Jidena didn't just try. He proved it. He kept coming back. He met her people, sat in her tiny house, and shared meals with her neighbors. He didn't just love her, he embraced her world. And slowly, Amora let him in. But not everyone was happy. When the news broke that Jidena Obiora, Nigeria's youngest billionaire, was dating a homeless orange seller, society erupted. Social media exploded. He must be under a spell. How can a billionaire lower himself like this? She's a gold digger, watch and see. His mother, Chief Mrs. Obiora, was furious. She is not your kind, Jidena, she screamed. What will people say? I don't care what they say, Mama, he replied calmly. I love her. Mrs. Obiora tried everything, bribing Amora, threatening her, even setting up an arranged marriage for Jidena. But he refused to leave her. And when Amora finally realized that, she stopped fighting her own heart. She let herself love him back. A year later, Lagos witnessed a wedding like never before. The richest man in the city married the girl who once sold oranges by the roadside. Amora walked down the aisle in a dress that shimmered like moonlight, her confidence untouched, her head still held high. And as Jidena took her hands in his, he whispered, "From the moment you challenged me on the street, I knew you were mine." She smiled. "I told you my oranges were worth it." Laughter. Kisses. Applause. The poor orange seller had stolen the billionaire's heart. And this time, she wasn't giving it back.